Hi, my name is Julianne, and today I'm going to be talking about Game of Thrones. So, I did a tag a while back, and it was like unpopular opinions tag or something like that, and I said that I would never, ever watch the show, nor will I ever read the books. So I'm completely caught up on Game of Thrones, and I'm on book 2. Well, I finished book 2, now I gotta read book 3. Yeah. I ended up getting into the fandom. Not my plan, but when you have a boyfriend whose favorite show is Game of Thrones, what do you expect, right? Well, I decided that for Game of Thrones, I wanted to talk about. My plan was to do episode by episode, but if you've been around this channel for even a small amount of time, you will notice that I don't always follow through with doing episode by episode for shows, like for The Magician for season 1. I didn't make a video until episode 8 recapping everything, so with Game of Thrones, how I'm doing this is I'm doing episodes 1 through 3, and then I'll do the last half of the season, so 3 through 6. I don't know if that's the best way, or if I should make the last episode be its own episode. Its own video, but I guess it depends. For this video, I want to talk mainly about episode 3, but obviously I'll discuss episode 1 and 2. This video is going to have spoilers, obviously, for season 8, episodes 1 through 3, so if you don't want to get spoiled. But I will just briefly explain what the show is about for those who don't know. It's one of those shows where I'm sure, everyone's heard of it, but maybe not everyone knows what it's actually about besides, dragons. This show is epic fantasy, I guess. Genres are weird, but anyways, I would consider it epic fantasy, and there's a lot of different characters, there's a lot of different plots. There are 2 main plot lines that are happening throughout the show. One is the character of Daenerys. Her family used to control the country of Westeros, and her father was murdered, and her brother had to go into hiding, and so it's part of the journey of her reclaiming her throne, of her trying to gather her resources to go back to Westeros, because she had to leave, and it's the journey of her trying to get back to this throne. But at the same time, there is an enemy to the north, not the Starks. They're the ones that live in the north, they're the furthest people, the furthest family. But there is something beyond the wall that is threatening the people of Westeros. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there is a threat beyond the wall that they have to confront as well. So those are the 2 main plot lines, the 2 main things that all come to a head in season 8. If you know anything about Game of Thrones, you know that there's a lot of character deaths. That is true, a lot of people do die. There is a lot of violence, there's a lot of blood. That's just the nature of the show. But I will just be a little serious here. Trigger warning, there is a lot of rape. Seriously, there's a lot of rape. And which is something that I don't like about the show. But, so let's get into this. If you haven't watched season 8, episodes 1 through 3, you should go now. So, spoilers, bye. Before I really get into it, I kind of wanted to show a timeline of episode 1, getting ready. I had this whole montage scene that I was going to do for episode 1, the video that I made on episode 1, and now it's episode 3. But I'm still going to do my montage scene because for episode 1, we were watching it with a bunch of friends, and so me and Uriel, my boyfriend, made bread. So I just want to do a little montage scene of us making it and how it turned out and that whole thing. Also, we started a Deadpool, and it's great. It's just it's funny because it's actually, can you die now so I can win?
Doro says that Barrack is not.
So episode 1, how I organized my thoughts. So this is how it worked. So I had, what is this, episode of deaths. So I was like counting the deaths, fire, I'll explain that later, and all the stuff that happens in the episode. What I want to discuss, it's very difficult to figure out how to break it down. I kind of want to do episode by episode, but I don't want to discuss episode 1 or 2 as much because I feel like there's so much more to discuss in episode 3, obviously. Something I really wanted to discuss just because it's there in my notes is about fire. So something that I noticed about the show, which is kind of obvious, is the people with fire have power. The best example, obviously, is Daenerys with her dragons. It's literal fire, it's literal power. I really think that every episode, like, if you start paying attention to this, anyone who has power has fire behind them. So, for example, there's actually last season when Littlefinger was starting to lose power, you actually can see that there were candles behind him and not all of them were lit, meaning his power was waning. Something that I thought was super interesting in episode 1 pertaining to fire is Daenerys and Sansa meeting. Daenerys is standing like over here, Sansa's standing like over here, and behind Daenerys you can see fire like behind her, but behind Sansa you cannot. And so I was like, oh, so Daenerys in the scene has more power than Sansa. I kind of want to discuss this in a little bit more detail later on, but Brienne, when she was knighted, when she stood up, she had fire behind her, and it was just super nice. Episode 3, when it comes to fire, is obvious, is that the dead were not lit at all before the battle, and all of the living had fire, and then the living in the end win. But I think what's interesting when it comes to the characters of Jon and Daenerys is that, I don't know, what season was this? Was it more like season 2 or something? So if you guys remember, how Jon, when he was with the wildlings, how his clothes were black like the crows, you know? And then as time went by, his clothes slowly began to match the wildlings as he started to assimilate into their culture. So you could tell that he was assimilating into their culture just based off of his clothing. By the time he was into Ygritte, or maybe he always was, but by the time like him and Ygritte were hooking up, like his clothes matched hers. Take in mind, does his clothes match Daenerys? And yes, of course, black and white, they go together, but I mean like, Jon's clothing was literally the same coloring as Ygritte's. In this, Jon's is black, Daenerys is white. So it's very interesting to think, like, even though the colors technically match, the idea that they are two separate colors anyways is something to think about. And so that's why I think that their relationship probably won't work out. Also, there's that funny little thing where they're related, which something that I think is hilarious, kind of, and slightly disturbing, is everyone, like, at least in the show, I don't know about other people, but at least in the show, like, the characters seem more worried about the fact that Jon has the right to the throne, and not the fact that, he slept with his aunt. Jon Snow slept with his aunt. Daenerys slept with her nephew. They committed incest, and yet they're more worried about the fact that Jon has the right to the throne. Okay, bye. I guess, to be honest, they're Targaryens, like, what do you expect? Also, you could see that Daenerys and Jon were gonna get together from, like, 200 miles away, and it was just like, why? I saw it coming, and I was just so sad. I was just like, can we not have this? Can you not touch his hand? Oh, she touched her hand. She touched his hand. Oh no, they're getting together. With Jon, something that I was thinking about that I thought was really interesting, the title of the books, like the title of the series is A Song of Ice and Fire. And at first, now that we're like in season 7, season 8, I was thinking like, oh, Daenerys and Jon, because she is fire, he is ice because he's a Stark. And then I was like, wait a minute, is A Song of Ice and Fire about Jon? And, like, that's something to think about, because there's so many different characters. It's just, like, is the series really about one character, really? So I have this theory, which I know other people have this theory too. Sam is the author of the series, which I believe. I have receipts where there's a moment in the show where I'm like, oh, he's gonna be the writer. But I believe that because, I don't know, I just feel like in a story like this, you want to have someone become the author of the story and to explain everything that happened. I believe Sam is that character. I'll explain why in a moment. If someone is gonna be the main character and Sam is the author, who would he pick as the main character? Jon, right? So if Jon is the embodiment of a Stark and a Targaryen, and he is ice and he is fire, the series is about him. And it's interesting to think about, because does that mean he's gonna be king? Is he gonna be the main king, which I think is unfair. Like, in the story where women don't have a lot of power, I just think it's kind of bullshit to be like, oh, this woman is gonna be queen, and now we're just gonna make the guy become king, and I'm just like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. I don't think it's a bad thing if a guy becomes a ruler, but when it was framed as like, oh, women are getting power, and then you take that away, that's when there's that issue. But it's a thing to think about when the title of your entire series is called A Song of Ice and Fire, and you have a character who literally embodies ice and fire, you know? So maybe it is about Jon. Maybe Jon has to sacrifice himself to save the world, or whatever. I don't know. Ooh, what if he dies at the end? I didn't put him on my Deadpool though, so usually, at least as far as I'm aware, like, sometimes songs are about people who have died, who have sacrificed themselves in a noble way, and so if this is a song about Jon, it's about his heroic journey through Westeros, you know, helping to face the Night King, the Battle of the Bastards, defeating Cersei, and then having to die to sacrifice himself for some reason, right? But who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe A Song of Ice and Fire is really about Daenerys and Jon, or Daenerys and a different Stark. Daenerys and Sansa, I don't know, you know, there's so much tension going on there. I mean, come on, there's, like, with Daenerys and Sansa, you know, a little bit of the enemies to lover storyline, huh? I don't actually ship them, by the way, in case you're wondering. I have another theory that goes with Daenerys that I wanted to put out there, and that is, she discusses, back in the day, that she wants to break the wheel. And I feel like the throne, like, the Iron Throne is the wheel. Like, it's, like, the point of it was that anyone who sits on it should be uncomfortable with power. The problem is everyone wants to get to the throne anyways. Everyone wants the power. So the throne doesn't even matter anymore, because all it does is symbolize power. It doesn't symbolize being uncomfortable with power. It's about power now. So I think that by her breaking the wheel, it means destroying the throne. Like, maybe not the fact that, not destroying being a ruler. It's not like, you know, we're gonna be a socialist society all of a sudden, but, like, I feel like she might break the throne because it symbolizes power. It symbolizes the old power, and, like, she's the new queen in town, you know? So I feel like she's gonna do that. I don't know, maybe her dragon will melt the throne away or something like that. I don't know. But I think that the throne is gonna go away, because it's the most iconic piece of being a king or queen in Westeros. And if she wants to get rid of the old kings and the old queens and the old way of ruling and wants to break the wheel of power, she has to destroy the symbol of power. So yeah, that's my theory on that. And then I think that Sam is the author of the story. So the reason why I think Sam is going to be the author is just because I feel like, again, that this is a type of story that needs an author and needs somebody to sit down and explain it. Because they were talking about with the Maesters, they are the record keepers. They kept the record of the first long night, I think, right? So in the war room, when they're, like, planning for when the Night King comes, they mention, unfortunately I didn't rewatch the first episode or the second episode, so I don't really remember everything. I just kind of took down a quick note, but basically, I wrote down that they were discussing how death is forgetting, and Sam said death is forgetting. How do you not forget something? You write it down. So that's why. This is one of the reasons why. Like, I feel like if they're discussing how death is forgetting, a way to remember this is by writing it down. He has seen the maesters in the library and everything like that. He knows how important it is to write all of this stuff down. Okay, something else I remember is that Sam was talking to one of the maesters, and the maesters told him about a book that he had written, and he said this whole long title. It wasn't poetic at all, and so Sam's like, well, shouldn't it sound more poetic? Shouldn't it sound better? You know what sounds poetic when you write the title of something? A Song of Ice and Fire. That sounds fucking poetic to me, especially if it's a metaphor for John. There's so many things that I kind of want to discuss, cinematography, like Theon and Sansa's reunion. Love the cinematography on that. I really like Sam and Gilly and baby Sam, which, side note, Sam is my favorite character, and I was so worried he was gonna die the whole time. Knock on wood over here. Let's get to episode 3, called The Long Night, which honestly, that was a long night. It was like 80 minutes, okay. I haven't quite been looking up what people have reviewed about the show, but from what I've seen, like, one of the major things that people complained about that I thought was hilarious is people are like, it's too dark. We can't see who's dying. And I'm like, that's the point. It's a battle. It's a war. You don't know who's dead until the end of it. And also, I don't know why people are saying it's so dark. It's so well lit. Like, with all the candles, like, you can see everything. It was pretty easy to spot people. But maybe that's just me. But I don't know, like, I just thought it was funny that everyone's complaining about this. I'm like, it was not an issue at all for me. But some of my favorite moments from the show, from the episode, was when Melisandre, or whatever her name is, made all the weapons light on fire, and it just, like, kind of expanded like that. Like, ooh, that was cool. When all the Darathki, how do you pronounce them? I can't pronounce anything, so sorry. When they started running and you just see this just fire going forward, like, that was super cool. Another scene that I liked was when Arya was fighting and she just, like, rolled over the dead. Like, that part was actually hilarious. I love that part. It was so funny. The one that had me on the edge, though, was when she was in the library. Like, that was very stressful, and I really, really liked that. Like, I liked the way it was shot and everything. It was so much fun. I really like how the show isn't a fantasy political intrigue type of show anymore. It's like, we're a zombie show now. Deal with it. I love the scene when Arya just, like, jumps out of nowhere and stabs the Night King. Or, like, she gets caught and then she stabs him at the end. Like, that, for half a second I was like, is Arya gonna die? And then, like, no, she stabs him and kills him. And in the behind the scenes, they said that they had been planning that for, like, 3 years, and I was like, cool. Like, cool that they actually thought it out, like, for that long. And it's, like, as a writer, like, I can see, like, waiting for, like, that payoff, and, like, you finally get the payoff for what you've been planning this whole time. Like, that's awesome. I did like that. I really did enjoy seeing that. Like, I think that was one of the coolest scenes in the show, and I really wasn't expecting it, because, again, you think it's gonna be Jon who kills him, and I really like that they didn't go that route. They were like, nah, it seemed too easy. And speaking of Jon and Daenerys, I really liked how, or at least I feel like this is the battle that humbles them, because Jon didn't do much, and Daenerys fell off her dragon like a freaking idiot. And, like, seriously, she wasn't paying attention at all, and I think this is and she's gonna feel guilty for Jorah's death, which, like, yay, pedophile dead. But, sorry, Jorah's a pedophile. He's literally described as being in love with a 13-year-old child, and that is creepy, and I do not enjoy that, so now that he's finally dead, I am happy. I have strong opinions about these things. I don't know if you can tell. What were we talking about? Oh, right, Daenerys being an idiot. She's gonna feel guilty for Jorah's death, of course, and I feel like this is the battle where they're like, oh, we did shit, while everyone else really worked hard, obviously, to not die and to fight back the dead. And I'm hoping that Jon and Daenerys are humbled by this battle and by this war, and are like, wow, we didn't really do anything, but everyone else around us worked hard. If it weren't for them, everyone would be dead. We're the one with the dragons, but they're the ones with the fire.